This video is going to be a Vanguard portfolio update as of the end of Q1 2021. I'm going to show you all the investments I have through Vanguard, who I have my stocks and shares ISA with. This was the first video I also made on my channel, so I thought it'd be good to revisit it, talk a bit about the funds that I invest into, my investing approach, and why I use Vanguard, which is what this video is going to be all about. Without wasting any time, if we jump straight into my Vanguard account, you can see that I've got a portfolio value of just over £8,400, and the personal rate of return is 32.52%. It's probably going to be easiest to jump straight into my account and then talk through different things about why I chose the fund that I invest into, why I chose Vanguard, and so on as we go. So the first thing, as you can see, my ISA value is just over £8,400 and my personal rate of return is 32.52%. Pretty decent, but the main thing to point out here is this did not happen overnight. This has been built up over a number of years. So I've actually been investing monthly into my stocks and shares ISA with Vanguard for nearly 3 years now. As well as that, if I do get any money, I often will then put it into my stocks and shares ISA to invest for the long term. So this certainly hasn't happened overnight. It's been years of monthly consistent contributions, mainly into one fund, which I'll get onto in a second. To get into my investments then, which is what probably people are mainly interested in, I'll get onto a bit why I actually use Vanguard for my stocks and shares ISA. I'm a big fan of the platform, but I have two investments. So as you can see, 93% at the time of recording is in the FTSE Global All Cap Index Fund accumulation, and I've also got a bit of money in the Emerging Markets Stock Index Fund. So the first thing to note is the Emerging Markets Fund looks a bit out of place, and it is, to be honest with you. I'm sort of considering whether I should just actually sell it at this point and just put all of the money into the FTSE Global All Cap. I made that investment very soon after opening up my stocks and shares ISA with some money that I'd made from working, and yeah, not particularly much of a reason. I've held it since, so been over 2.5 years now. Of course, I've made £100. The weight is only 7%, so it's pretty small. I guess at worst, it's given me a bit of extra emerging markets exposure, but I get that through the FTSE Global All Cap already, which is 10% emerging markets, so I probably don't really need it. At the moment it's sitting there. If you think I should maybe sell it and just put the money in the FTSE Global All Cap, please let me know. I probably should have already, I'm just being a bit lazy, but as you can see, only 7% of my ISA portfolio is in that fund, and as I continue to invest monthly into the FTSE Global All Cap, that's going to probably become like 1% over the next couple of years, unless I sell it and just put the money into the FTSE Global All Cap. Getting onto the FTSE Global All Cap then, as you can see, 93% of my money is in that one fund. So the cost is about 7 grand and the current value is 7,800. So the change, £853, not too bad. For a global index fund, people often think index funds are boring and you only track the market rather than trying to beat the market. But as you can see, with a relatively small amount of money as far as investments go, and only doing it for a few years, I've already made some decent returns using that global index fund. Before I actually dig a bit deeper into why I have chosen that index fund, I actually have made a whole video on it, but I'll touch on it here. And also, yeah, my investing strategy is quite useful here because you can actually click on the fund and you can see at every point I've been investing. So the green dots across that graph is where I've been investing month after month. You can also see some one-off investments have been made, and that is called dollar cost averaging or pound cost averaging. It's essentially, rather than just chucking all my money in at one point, you can spread it out over time. Of course, because I have a job and I get paid monthly, I have an automatic investment that then goes into this fund, and I made a few one-off payments. As you can see, some more green dots around January and February 2021 as I've been trying to max out that ISA allowance for the 2020-2021 tax year. But yeah, it's quite a good little handy thing you can see on Vanguard. And then of course it gives you your average unit cost, which for me is 143, and then the price on the 2nd of April today is £160. I'm going to dig a bit deeper into that specific fund and why I use it, but the main reason why I have pretty much all of my money in my stocks and shares ISA in that fund, I also have 100% of my money in my lifetime ISA in that fund, and between them two accounts, that makes up, I believe, around 80 to 90% of my total stock market investments at the time of recording. So most of my money is in this one global index fund split across two platforms. The reason why I use it is because, first of all, I believe that you can't beat the market, particularly over the long term. If I'm going to be investing for 30, 40, 50 years, there is no way I'm going to be able to consistently pick stocks or a manager is going to be able to consistently pick stocks to beat the market over the long term. So I concede that on that point and instead try to track the market. Then when it comes to tracking the market, you choose an index fund. Personally, I take the global approach. A lot of people just use the S&P 500 or the total US stock market. However, the total US stock market only makes up about 55% of the global stock market. So even though it's still a massive bulk and global index funds are still very much driven by US stocks, personally, I'd rather take a global approach, own all the companies across the world, in the UK, in Europe, in China, and the emerging markets, in the US, and then I'm globally diversified, all for a very low fee, and my wealth will slowly build and compound over time. And the benefit of this is I don't need to know which country is going to perform the best. If the US starts performing poorly over the next 20 years, that's fine, because I own a global index fund and I'm investing into every country pretty much in the world, or wherever stocks exist in countries, I'm investing into them even if it's only a small amount. I think a lot of people get fixated on the US and tracking the S&P 500, but it's also, and that's good I guess for a benchmark, but it's also important to say that that's only 500 companies where there are thousands in the world. So should the US underperform in a decade, like it actually did between the 2000s and 2010 due to the dot-com crash and a financial crash, you're missing out on potential gains from other parts of the world. But yeah, so that's my approach and why I have most of my money in a global index fund. Now I thought I'd look a bit more specifically at this global index fund. So it's called the FTSE Global All Cap Index Fund Accumulation. Bit of a mouthful. If you follow me on Instagram, which you should do, you know I will bang on about this fund all day long. If anyone messaged me being like, oh yeah, I want to invest into this REIT, I want to invest into this dividend fund, I want to invest, I'm just like, mate, I just invest into this one fund pretty much. That's most of my strategy. I do it monthly. I've been doing it monthly for years and will continue doing it monthly. But yeah, so as you can see, this fund has got nearly 7,000 stocks in it, which is what I'm saying, where it's globally diversified and the stocks all around the world. The ongoing charge is 0.23%, which for a global diversified index fund is actually pretty low fee. The good thing about the FTSE Global All Cap in comparison to some of the FTSE All World ETFs, such as VWRL and VWRP, is that it also includes small cap stocks. So they only make up about 5 to 10% of the portfolio of the index fund, but it invests into large, medium and small sized companies. And just like it's impossible to predict over our lifetimes which country is going to perform the best, it's also impossible to predict which size of company is going to perform the best, be it small caps or large caps, which is why, once again, it's not just diversified by geographical location, but also by company size. So yeah, if small caps do amazingly well in 10 years time, then I'm going to be participating in them brilliant gains through this index fund. I know people are always interested in the performance, so just to quickly touch on that, you can see this graph on Vanguard's website. So it took a bit of a dip when the stock market took a dip in the March 2020 coronavirus crash, when bad news started coming out, but it's rebounded just like a lot of stock markets, a lot of index funds, and it's currently sitting at all-time highs of £160. But that is not going to deter me. I'm still going to be investing monthly, because as companies become innovative and grow and develop and adapt over time, as companies succeed and fail, I'm going to be continuing to invest into this global index fund and build my wealth slowly through using it. To dig a bit deeper into the portfolio data, as you can see here, it is broken down by country, and as I mentioned, the US makes up about 55% of the global stock market, and in this fund it makes up 56.6%. It's then got Japan, China, the UK, and so on and so forth. There are also life strategy funds which are quite popular in the UK, but life strategy funds generally have a bit of a UK bias, a home bias, and it's about 20% UK stocks, whereas as you can see in here, UK stocks only make up 4.1%, and that is because that is the proportion of the global stock market that they actually make up. So there's not as much of a home bias in this fund. And that is the good thing about, I personally think, of this fund, is that you're market weighted to different countries in the proportion that they make up of the global stock market. So the UK makes up 4 or 5% of the global stock market, and it's got 4.1% region exposure here. The US makes up about 55% of the global stock market. Of course that changes daily as stock prices fluctuate, but 55%, and it makes up here 56.6%, so it's weighted in proportion to each country's proportion of the total global stock market, if that makes sense. You also got weighted exposure. All of these graphs are just from the Vanguard website as well, by the way, and as you can see, it's weighted towards tech, and that's all split up like that. And then moving on down to the individual holding details, no surprise, the main holdings are Apple, Microsoft and Amazon, the biggest companies in the world. Any US index fund or ETF, any global index fund or ETF is all going to have the largest percentage of holdings in them big companies that make up a huge part of the global stock market, which have $1 trillion worth of market cap. Moving on to the distribution, which is the next tab, as you can see, the dividend essentially that was paid as of February 2021 was 1.44%. Not a brilliant dividend yield, but this is an accumulation fund, so all of that money gets automatically reinvested to buy more of the fund for myself. So hands off, I don't need to manually reinvest that cash. Because it's an accumulation fund, it happens automatically. And we briefly touched on the cost already, but it's got a 0.23% ongoing charge. And if you want to start investing, you either need a £500 one-off payment, or you can do what I did when I started nearly 3 years ago. I set up a £100 monthly direct deposit, and that has been coming out every month ever since. And that is my stocks and shares ISA portfolio with Vanguard. Quite a good time to record it at the time of recording, just before the end of the new tax year. So this will be a good sort of reference point. I probably will try and do one each quarter and just sort of see how my money is doing. Of course, I'm trying to contribute as much as possible today, because that is then going to compound for me over the years and the decades, and hopefully one day I can live off of my investments, which are growing tax-free inside the stocks and shares ISA. And one thing I will touch on here is why I actually have my stocks and shares ISA with Vanguard as opposed to another provider. The tax year has just started, so people will be opening up stocks and shares ISAs. The first thing I'd say is you want to start with the end in mind. So I only really want to invest into a global index fund, and Vanguard have the global index fund that I want to invest into. If you want to invest into individual stocks or REITs or iShares ETFs, for example, none of them products are available on Vanguard's website, as they only offer Vanguard ETFs and index funds, so Vanguard wouldn't be for you. But I only invest into Vanguard index funds and ETFs, and specifically the FTSE Global All Cap, so it's perfect for me. The second reason is that it's very low cost, as I've touched on. The fund is 0.23%, the platform fee is 0.15%, and not only that, but Vanguard are very transparent with the cost that they charge. So if you just Google Vanguard full cost and charges, you can see exactly how much total fee will be charged for each of their funds that they offer. Another reason is that I like the automatic nature. I've had an automatic payment going in, as I've said multiple times, for nearly 3 years now, and I'll continue to do that. It's very hands-off, very passive. And I guess the final thing is that I ultimately just trust them. They're the second largest asset manager in the world. I'm a massive fan of Jack Bogle, who created Vanguard and the index fund. And yeah, I guess that's important for me when it comes to investing. I trust the platform. I know what their fees are. There's no hidden fees. They're very transparent. Their customer service is good when I spoke to them. I'm not actually getting paid for this, unfortunately. I wish Amazon did have an affiliate program. I probably could have, retired by now. But I'm a massive fan of the platform, and specifically the global approach of the FTSE Global All Cap. But yeah, just to finish this off again then, my ISA currently stands at £8,400 with 93% of that in a FTSE Global All Cap. My personal rate of return is 32.52%. If you use Vanguard, I'd be interested to know what you invest into, if you invest into the same fund as me or a different fund. Even if you don't use Vanguard, I'd be interested to see who your stocks and shares ISA provider is with and what you invest into, so please let me know in the comments below. But other than that, that wraps up this Vanguard portfolio update, and I'll see you again in 3 months with another portfolio update, but there'll be another video coming next week. But yeah, thank you very much for watching.